Welcome to your storytelling. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to subscribe. You know, when we first met, I thought he was the most mysterious man I'd ever encountered. I mean, who wears tortoiseshell glasses, quotes obscure poets, and carries around a leather-bound notebook like he's straight out of a movie? I was completely enchanted. He told me he was writing a novel, a deeply personal story, something that had haunted him for years. He said it would be his masterpiece. I was flattered that he let me read little bits of it sometimes, just fragments, nothing revealing. But he'd always look at me with those intense eyes and say, "You inspire me." I believed him. I cooked for him while he scribbled away in cafes, rearranged our entire apartment to create a creative space for him. I bragged to my friends that I was dating a real writer. But if only I had looked a little closer at those pages. If only I had asked more questions about the story he claimed he was telling. I thought I was his muse. I had no idea I was just the distraction. There was this drawer in his writing desk that he never opened around me. At first, I thought nothing of it. Everyone has private things, right? But then, one night, I was cleaning, and I saw him slip a small envelope inside and lock it. He noticed me watching and said, "Just some old notes. Nothing important." He kissed my forehead and brushed it off so casually that I felt guilty for even asking. But something about the way he guarded that drawer stayed with me. One afternoon, while he was out running errands, I sat at his desk, staring at that lock. I know, I shouldn't have, but curiosity ate at me. I tried to open it, but he'd changed the key from the usual one. That night, I asked again, and this time, he got defensive, snappy even. "Why can't you respect my space?" he snapped. "Writers need secrets." I let it go, for a little while. But deep down, I knew something was off. Writers may have secrets, sure, but not ones they guard like this. Not from someone they claim to love. He printed drafts of his book every few weeks. I'd see piles of paper in his office with scribbled notes in the margins. One day, while organizing the laundry, a single page slipped out from one of his folders. I didn't mean to read it. At least, that's what I told myself. But the words weren't fiction. They were a letter. A love letter. At first, I assumed it was something old. But then I saw the date. Last week. And the name at the top? Elise. I didn't know an Elise. Not a friend. Not a colleague. The words weren't about characters or plot. They were intimate, detailed, romantic. He wrote about missing her scent, her voice, how she made him feel alive again. I stood there holding that page, feeling my world tilt sideways. My heartbeat was so loud, I couldn't hear anything else. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe Elise was a character. Maybe he was experimenting with form. Writers do that, right? But a part of me already knew. I wasn't the inspiration. I was the cover story. I tried to act normal, but I couldn't unsee that letter. Every time he smiled at me, I wondered if he was thinking of her. So I did what I never thought I'd do. I checked his laptop while he was in the shower. I hate snooping, but I had to know. In his email drafts, I found dozens of unsent letters addressed to Elise. Some dated back months. Some as recent as yesterday. They weren't just love letters. They were poems, confessions, memories. He talked about a trip to Paris, about their song, about how hard it was to pretend like they were over. My hands were shaking. I searched her name on social media. Found her. Blonde. Sophisticated. Artsy. Everything I wasn't. Her profile was public, but he wasn't in her photos. Not now, at least. But she had shared an old black and white photo of them together, years ago, with the caption, "What could have been?" That's when I realized this wasn't some short fling. This was a past he never left behind. And I was just the pause between paragraphs. I almost confronted him that night. I rehearsed what I'd say 100 times. But when he came home, he had my favorite wine and a goofy smile, saying he finished the most emotional chapter yet. And just like that, I choked. I couldn't do it. I smiled, nodded, kissed him. But inside, I was screaming. That night, while he slept beside me, I lay awake wondering what kind of woman I'd become. The kind who finds proof and says nothing? The kind who shares a bed with a man writing love letters to someone else? I thought maybe he was trying to get closure. Maybe these letters were part of his healing process. Maybe he didn't even send them. I clung to those maybes like lifelines. But deep down, I knew the truth. He wasn't trying to heal. He was reliving, rewriting, reimagining a life with her, on paper and in his heart. And I was just the reader in the margins. A week passed since I found the letters, and I convinced myself to stop obsessing. I started acting like everything was fine, smiling, cooking his favorite meals, trying to be the perfect girlfriend. But he wasn't making it easy. One evening, we were watching TV together when he casually mentioned Elise. She always loved this show, he said, almost absent-mindedly. My stomach dropped. He'd never mentioned her before. Not in the context of casual conversation. He saw the look on my face and quickly added, "Oh, she's an old friend. You wouldn't know her. We watched this show together a lot when we were, in Paris." I froze. Paris? I hadn't heard about Paris. "What's wrong?" he asked, noticing my silence. My mind was racing, but all I could do was nod. "Nothing," I muttered. But everything inside me screamed, this isn't nothing. It was him revealing a part of his life that I wasn't a part of, without even thinking twice. A slip-up that cut deep. I wanted to confront him. I really did. But I was scared. Scared of losing him. Scared of what I might find. So, I kept pretending like nothing was wrong, while inside, I was falling apart. I couldn't stop thinking about the letters, about Paris, about Elise. It felt like I was in a silent war with myself. Every time he kissed me, I wondered if his lips still remembered her. Every time he said, "I love you," I questioned if those words were ever meant for me, or if they were just a replacement. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus, couldn't do anything but wonder if I was living in a lie. He had no idea that I had seen the other side of him, the one that was still tangled in the past, still writing letters to the woman he couldn't let go of. I was drowning in doubt, but I couldn't let him see. He had no idea I was slipping away, piece by piece. A few days later, while we were at dinner, he dropped another bombshell. He mentioned that Elise was coming to town for a book signing, and he wanted to go. "I think you'd really like her," he said, as if I had anything in common with the woman who had lived in his heart long before I ever came along. I tried to mask my shock, but it was impossible. I choked on my food, trying to swallow the overwhelming lump in my throat. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" I asked, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to sound casual. He frowned, clearly caught off guard. "Why wouldn't it be?" he asked. "She's just an old friend. We've talked about catching up for years." Old friend? Catching up? Why did it feel like I was the one who was being left behind? I could feel my heart racing as I tried to keep my composure. "I think I'll stay home," I said, suddenly not wanting to be anywhere near him and her. The thought of him reconnecting with her was unbearable. But he just smiled, oblivious. He kissed my cheek and told me how much he appreciated my understanding. That was the moment I realized. He wasn't even aware of the harm he was causing. He was living in a world where I was just another chapter, and she was the one who had left the deepest mark. The day of Elise's book signing, I stayed home, lost in a whirlwind of emotions. I kept telling myself I shouldn't care, but I couldn't help it. The thought of them seeing each other, reconnecting, made me sick. Hours passed, and I sat by the window, waiting for him to return. And when he finally did, it wasn't what I expected. He didn't come back alone. He came back with her. Elise was standing in the doorway, her smile too bright, too familiar. "Hey," he said casually, "this is Elise." She wanted to stop by and say hello. My blood ran cold. Elise stood there, looking me over with an air of quiet confidence. She was everything I wasn't, effortlessly beautiful, poised, and calm. She extended her hand, but I couldn't bring myself to shake it. "Nice to meet you," I said, my voice betraying the bitterness I felt inside. Elise smiled like she already knew the truth, like she knew she had the upper hand. "It's been so long," she said to him, her eyes lingering on him a little too long. The tension was suffocating. I watched them exchange smiles, and I realized I was the stranger in this room. Elise was the one who belonged here. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of Elise standing in our apartment haunted me. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was the one who truly owned him. I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know everything. I didn't care what it cost me. I went straight to his desk, to that locked drawer. I had been patient long enough. This time, I wasn't going to wait for him to give me the answers. I had to find them myself. I grabbed the key, unlocked the drawer, and opened it. Inside, there were letters, dozens of them. But what caught my eye was the envelope on top. It was addressed to me. I hesitated for a second, confused. Why was he writing me a letter like this? I opened it, my hands trembling. But what I read wasn't what I expected. It was another letter to Elise. A letter about me. How he wished he could tell her everything, but he didn't want to hurt me. How he was torn between the past and the present. How he felt like he was living a lie with me. I dropped the letter, my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was a man who was still in love with someone else. After I found that letter, something inside me snapped. I confronted him the very next day. I couldn't hold back anymore. I told him I knew everything. His face turned pale, but he didn't deny it. I never meant for you to find out this way, he whispered, his voice shaky. I had to look away. I couldn't stand to see the guilt in his eyes. Why didn't you just tell me? I asked, my voice a mix of pain and anger. He sighed deeply, as if the weight of the world was pressing on him. I didn't want to hurt you, he said softly. I thought maybe the feelings would go away, but they didn't. I didn't know how to let go of her. I thought I could balance both, but I see now I was wrong. His confession shattered me. He was still holding on to a love that wasn't mine, and I had been blind enough to stay. I sat in silence, staring at him, trying to process everything he had just said. My heart ached, and yet, I felt an odd sense of clarity. For the first time, I saw him for what he was, someone who couldn't let go of his past. I knew then that I had to make a choice. I could either stay and fight for a relationship that was never truly mine, or walk away and protect my own heart. You have to choose, I said, my voice trembling with emotion. You can't keep living in the past. You have to decide, me or her. His eyes flickered with hesitation, and for a moment, I thought he might choose her. But then he looked down at the floor, as if ashamed of what he had done. I don't know if I can make that decision yet, he admitted. The words hit me like a slap. He wasn't ready to let go, and that was all I needed to know. I turned away, knowing I couldn't stay in a relationship built on uncertainty. The days that followed were filled with tension. I didn't speak to him much. We existed in the same space, but it felt like we were strangers. I had made my decision, but it didn't make the leaving any easier. He tried to reach out, texting, calling, apologizing, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. Finally, one evening, I gathered my things. I couldn't wait any longer. When he came home, I was packing. He stood in the doorway, looking at me like I was disappearing before his eyes. You're really leaving? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. You haven't chosen me, I said, my voice steady but full of pain. And I deserve someone who will. He didn't say anything else. There was nothing left to say. I walked out of the door that night, my heart breaking but my mind clear. I couldn't keep fighting for a love that wasn't mine to have. It took weeks for the pain to subside. I moved into my own apartment, surrounded by unfamiliar furniture and empty spaces. I threw myself into work, trying to fill the hole in my chest. But no matter how much I tried to distract myself, there was always a lingering thought. What if I had fought harder? What if I had given him more time? But the truth was, I couldn't keep holding on to someone who wasn't holding on to me. One night, I sat down and wrote a letter to him. Not one of anger or bitterness, but one of closure. I wrote about how much I had loved him, how I had wanted to be his future, but he was still holding on to the past. I told him I forgave him, but I couldn't keep living in the shadow of someone else's love. I never sent the letter, but writing it helped me let go. It was my way of closing that chapter, of saying goodbye for real. A few months passed. I was starting to heal, to rebuild my life. One afternoon, I ran into him at a cafe. My heart skipped a beat when I saw him sitting there, looking as though nothing had changed. But I had changed. I wasn't the same woman who had begged for his love. I wasn't the woman who had stayed when he couldn't choose. I walked past him, pretending I didn't see him. But then he called my name. Hey, he said, standing up. Can we talk? I paused, looking at him. For a moment, I considered walking away. But I was stronger now. We don't have anything to talk about, I said firmly. His face fell, and I could see the regret in his eyes. I'm sorry for everything, he said. I should have chosen you. I didn't say anything. I just nodded. Goodbye, I whispered. And then I walked away, leaving him standing there, realizing too late that it wasn't just the love letters that he had lost. It was me. Weeks went by, and I thought I had moved on. I was finally at peace, living my life without the constant weight of his betrayal. But then, out of nowhere, I received a message. It was from him. I know you don't want to hear from me. The message started. But I can't live with myself knowing that I hurt you. I never wanted to lose you. You were everything to me, and I'm sorry. I should have fought for us. My heart skipped a beat, but my head was clear. The pain from the past was still there, but I couldn't let it define me. I read the message over and over again, but something inside me told me to leave the past where it belonged. I didn't reply. I didn't need closure from him anymore. I had closed that chapter on my own terms. One day, I ran into Elise. It was completely by accident, at the same cafe where I had seen him weeks earlier. She didn't see me at first, but I saw her. She looked exactly how I had imagined, elegant, poised, and perfect in every way. She looked up and caught my eye, and for a moment, we just stood there, silent. Then she walked over. "You're the woman he left me for," she said, her tone surprisingly soft. I didn't know how to respond. Was she angry? Was she hurt? "I don't blame you," she continued, her gaze steady. "He's always been torn between us. But I'm letting him go now. He needs to fix what he's broken. I just want to move on." I stood there shocked. Elise wasn't the enemy I had imagined. She was just another person who had been hurt, just like me. "I hope you find happiness," I said quietly, then turned and walked away. It was an odd sense of closure. Neither of us had won, but we had both been victims of the same man's indecision. Months passed, and life started to feel like it was finally moving in the right direction. I threw myself into new projects, new hobbies, and a new social circle. I felt free, like a weight had been lifted from my chest. I realized that the person I had been before him, before all the drama and betrayal, was still inside me. I was stronger than I had ever known. I wasn't defined by his love or his mistakes. I was defined by my own growth. I didn't need validation from anyone else anymore. I was enough. I began to travel more, visit new places, and meet new people. And for the first time in months, I felt truly happy. Not because of anyone else, but because of who I had become. I had learned to love myself, and that was something no one could take away from me. A year after everything happened, I met someone new. He wasn't perfect. No one ever is. But he was kind, patient, and understanding. He didn't ask me to be anyone other than myself. Our connection was different, peaceful. There was no comparison to the chaos I had lived through before. He respected my past and didn't try to erase it. He understood my need for trust and honesty. And, most importantly, he showed me what true love was, something that wasn't built on lies, secrets, or betrayal. It felt like the universe was giving me a second chance, one that I would never take for granted. With him, I felt safe, heard, and valued. It was the kind of relationship I had always dreamed of but never thought I deserved. And for the first time, I realized maybe I had needed to go through all that pain to understand what real love felt like. One evening, as I sat with my new partner, looking out over the city from a rooftop bar, I realized that everything that had happened had led me here. I had once been broken by betrayal, but now I was whole again. The journey had been long, painful, and full of heartache, but it had also been transformative. I wasn't the same woman I had been when I was with him. I had grown, learned, and healed. I had learned that love isn't about clinging to someone who can't choose you, but about finding someone who truly values you. It wasn't about the letters he wrote to his ex or the lies he told me. It was about me finding my own strength, my own voice, and realizing that I deserve a love that is pure and true. As I looked at my partner, I realized that I had found that love. The past no longer had a hold on me. The final chapter of that painful story had been written, and I was finally free. Life had started to feel like a fresh beginning. Every day was a chance to embrace the future without being haunted by the ghosts of the past. My relationship with my new partner was nothing like what I had with him. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was honest. There were no secrets, no hidden letters, and certainly no past lovers lurking in the shadows. I began to see the world through a new lens, one where I was in control of my own happiness. I was no longer living for the approval of someone who couldn't even choose me. For the first time in a long while, I felt confident in my own skin. I was no longer defined by the mistakes of others, but by the strength I had found within myself. Just when I thought I had moved on completely, the phone rang. It was him. My heart skipped a beat, and I almost didn't answer. But curiosity got the better of me, and I picked up. "I know you don't want to talk to me." His voice came through, sounding distant and regretful. "But I need to tell you something." I felt a knot form in my stomach. Was this another attempt to apologize? To pull me back into his world of lies and confusion? "What is it?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. He hesitated before speaking again. "I've realized something," he said softly. "I wasn't ready for you when I had you. I was too focused on my past and my own insecurities. But I've changed. I've been working on myself, and I want you to know that." I took a deep breath, absorbing his words. But I knew in that moment that it was too late. I'm happy where I am now, I said firmly. You're not part of my future anymore. And with that, I ended the call. I didn't need him to validate me anymore. I had already moved on. It wasn't until months later that I saw him in person again. It was a chance encounter at a mutual friend's gathering. He looked different, more settled, less lost. He approached me with a hesitant smile, clearly unsure of how to interact. Hey, he said, looking me in the eye. It's been a while. I nodded, trying to keep the conversation light. But deep inside, I felt nothing but indifference. Yeah, it has, I replied, offering a polite smile. I'm doing well. I hope you are too. There was an awkward silence between us. He shifted, clearly uncomfortable with the distance between us. I just wanted to apologize again, he said quietly. I know I hurt you, and I regret it every day. I wish I had been the man you needed me to be. I looked at him for a moment, taking in his words. And for the first time, I realized that his apologies no longer had any power over me. I had forgiven him long ago, but I had also moved on. I appreciate your apology, I said, my voice calm. But I'm not that woman anymore. I've let go. I've found my peace. He looked at me, his eyes filled with sadness, but I didn't feel pity. I felt free. I turned and walked away, knowing that the final chapter of our story had already been written. As time passed, I started to truly embrace the life I had built for myself. I didn't need anyone to complete me. I was whole on my own. I continued to nurture my relationship, one built on trust and understanding. I pursued my dreams with a renewed sense of purpose, traveling, exploring, and living life with joy. There were no more dark clouds hanging over me. My past no longer defined who I was. I had learned the hard way that love can be messy, but it can also be beautiful when it's built on respect and honesty. I no longer saw myself as a victim of betrayal. I saw myself as a survivor, someone who had overcome pain and found happiness on their own terms. I was proud of the person I had become. One day, while cleaning out some old boxes, I found something I hadn't thought about in years, an old notebook that I had kept when I was with him. I flipped through its pages, reading the entries of a woman who was so lost in love that she had overlooked the signs of betrayal. But as I read, I realized how far I had come. I was no longer that woman, searching for answers in someone else's heart. I had learned to look within myself for the strength I needed. The notebook held memories of pain, but also memories of growth. It was a reminder of how much I had transformed. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. I no longer needed to hold on to the past. I was ready to close that chapter for good. With one final look at the pages, I put the notebook away. The past was no longer my story to tell. My future was waiting, and it was mine to write. It had been nearly a year since I last saw him. Life had continued to move forward, and I had finally found a sense of peace. But then, one evening, as I was getting ready for dinner with my partner, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I opened the door with hesitation. And there he was, standing in front of me, looking older, with a worn expression. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice low. I stood there for a moment, unsure of what to say. I hadn't seen him in so long, and yet, here he was, asking for a second chance. But I didn't need to hear what he had to say to know that my decision had already been made. "I don't think there's anything left to say," I replied firmly, my heart steady. "I've moved on, and I'm happy. I don't need you to be part of that anymore." He looked disappointed, but I couldn't let myself be swayed. I closed the door gently, not out of anger, but out of respect for myself. As my life continued to unfold, I began to realize how deeply my new partner cared for me. We had built something special, something that felt right from the very beginning. There were no hidden secrets between us, no hidden agendas. What we had was genuine. He was my rock, my safe place. He encouraged me to chase my dreams, and he stood by me through every challenge. It was the kind of love I had always hoped for, a love that was kind, steady, and built on mutual respect. I realized that the pain from my past had led me to this moment, to this person who truly understood me. He wasn't perfect, but he was perfect for me. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I could truly trust someone with my heart again. One quiet evening, as we sat together watching a movie, I had a sudden realization. The past wasn't something I needed to forget, but rather something I had learned from. My journey had been filled with highs and lows, but it had led me to this moment of peace and happiness. I didn't need the approval of anyone to validate my worth. I had become my own source of strength. I looked at my partner, and for the first time, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Not just for him, but for everything that had happened. The pain, the betrayal, it all shaped me into the person I was today. And for that, I was thankful. The lessons I had learned from the past had made me more resilient, more self-aware, and more capable of loving in a healthy, balanced way. The final piece of closure came unexpectedly one afternoon when I received a letter. It was from him again. But this time, it wasn't a phone call or a visit. It was a heartfelt letter, one in which he admitted the depth of his mistakes. "I know I can never undo the hurt I caused," it read. "But I've spent so much time reflecting on everything, and I want you to know that I truly regret my actions. You deserve better than I ever gave you. I hope one day you can forgive me, not for my sake, but for your own peace of mind." I held the letter in my hands for a long time, letting his words sink in. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't resentful. I had forgiven him a long time ago, but I realized that forgiveness didn't mean I had to go back to him. It simply meant that I was no longer carrying the weight of his betrayal. I was free. As the years passed, I continued to build the life I had always dreamed of. I traveled, explored new passions, and deepened my relationship with the man who truly valued me. I had learned that love was not something you could force or manipulate. It was something that had to grow naturally, built on a foundation of trust and respect. I looked back at everything that had happened and realized how much I had learned. The pain, the heartbreak, the betrayal, they had all been part of my story, but they no longer defined me. I had written my own ending, and it was beautiful. I was no longer searching for someone else's love to complete me. I was whole, exactly as I was. And that was the most powerful realization of all. The past was behind me, and the future was bright, filled with possibilities. My story was mine to write, and I was ready to embrace every new chapter. Thank you for listening to my story until now. If you like the video, please support it by subscribing and liking.